Hey, everybody, it is your good friend, Dr. David Proden, and welcome to the Safety Doc podcast, live down here in the North Star recording studio. And it is the waning hours of my birthday right now. That's where we're at. I am 49 today. So first thing is I'm not doing a drag off the audio here. So if you can give me a little feedback, red one. Bacon, if things sound good. Atham, that would be great. I think it was a little hot on the mic last time, up a little too much. So I'm turning that down, but I prefer not to wear headphones tonight. So I've been wearing headphones for a lot of consulting stuff this week. So it's nice to have a break. So, okay. Thanks, Red. Appreciate that. So, yeah, I was playing back the show Failure to Regress to the Mean. And, when there's no way to go in and change the audio level on YouTube, at least I'm not aware of. In YouTube Studio, you used to be able to do that. You could change your level after a show had been recorded. But now I can go in and re-render things. Yeah, I can do that. And when I pull audio on this, I can level it out. But the YouTube drag was a little hot. It wasn't anything that was crackling. And I actually prefer it to be a little bit up because I think if someone's listening to this in their car, it's just nicer to not have to crank it all the way up to be able to hear over the ambient noise. But hey, how is everybody today? Red indicated that it is a nice, cool, brisk night in Ohio. And I just got in from our high school track, which is a few blocks away from where I live. Absolutely perfect night. About 62 degrees, somewhat humid. And I had a sweatshirt on and really could have managed, probably just like with a long sleeve t-shirt. Very, very nice. Because it's a little bit humid, it feels warmer. Just absolutely phenomenal. It's going to be 72 tomorrow here in Wisconsin. I live in the southern part of Wisconsin. I remember birthdays. So today's my birthday, right? So do Doc a favor on his birthday here. Click like for the show. Give me a thumbs up. Go on your social media right now and share it around with your friends. Just say, hey, Doc is on tonight. It's his birthday. Come in, follow the show, subscribe on YouTube and actually on Twitter at SafetyPhD. I would appreciate that too, because for some reason I have been hanging around 2,700 followers forever. So I just put it on Twitter and I don't know what it is. I mean, it's literally been months. I mean, it's gone from like within a 20 range up and down. And so, yeah, I'd like to be climbing again. That's kind of my primary mode of social media here. But yeah, so at Twitter, at safetyphd.com. So yeah, so really nice night. The thing that I have to watch out for on a night like tonight are skunks. So they'll come out and they'll start digging on the football field. We live in one of the few football areas where the football field isn't artificial turf. So the skunks come out at night when it's warm and they'll start digging up the field to eat the grubs. But no skunks. It was a really nice night to be out. So yeah, perfect birthday. Tomorrow's going to be 72. Another day to be outside. I've debated whether I should bike, but I did winterize my bike. And I'd have to bring it up from downstairs, lube up the chain, do some other stuff with it. And I'm probably not going to do that. Another thing with biking right now is when you have leaves, there's a few issues. One is they start to kind of grind up as you're biking and they become like a paste on the chain. And the second is they obscure what's on the road. So the areas where I ride, it's not always the best road conditions. So and you get these areas that get kind of shadowy and stuff like that. So leaves can be a little bit slippery. So it's, I don't know, maybe I'm just making an excuse, but I'll do something outside tomorrow. So, hey, it is Atham. Dun, da, da. Welcome. It is Joe. Welcome. So, yeah, anyway, I've got some big things I want to go through tonight. So let me touch on these right now. First is, again, subscribe to the show. Share it with your friends. If you have multiple YouTube accounts, just come on, log in, My subscribership here on YouTube has stayed at about 240 after kind of jumping up at the start of the year. So I know I haven't been producing quite as much content, but I do. This is show 150. So, I mean, there's a lot of good stuff out there. A lot of terrific interviews too. Yeah, subscribe, let your friends know, follow on Twitter, all of that type of stuff. So talking today, we're going to talk about regression to the mean, something I focused on in the last show. I'm going to bring up the diagram, and we've actually regressed to the mean really fast. Hey, it's David B. David B, welcome. Welcome to the club. Good doc. You are experiencing the lack of of censorship regarding your Twitter followers. There are no coincidences, doc. Yeah, David B, I appreciate that too. And I'm going to touch on this because I've had people reach out and contact me and say, they've lost a lot of subscribers, or else they've been deplatformed. One is Mike Glover. So Mike Glover is has the website fieldcraftsurvival.com. If you Google his name, you'll still find quite a bit of content from Mike. I was in the military for a number of years, was a government, I believe, advisor, consultant to the CIA. And Mike, in the last 24 hours, has been completely deplatformed. So what you'll find are remnants, but he lost not only his Twitter, Facebook, and I think he said his mom's Facebook. I mean, Mike is probably in his late 30s or early 40s. I think he said his mom's Facebook was taken down. Anything kind of ancillary connected to him was just taken out in this big swoop. So Mike is somebody who focuses a lot on teaching survival in classes, right? Survival classes, materials you would need for survival, but not specific to survival because of government collapse or anything like that, right? It's survival of, what if the power grid goes out because there's electromagnetic pulse, or, if you're stuck somewhere because of a storm. I mean, very, very typical probable scenarios. And so I knew Mike's content pretty well as a safety guy, not really in my wheelhouse, Mike's content, but I would glean parts of it, especially situational awareness. And anyway, his website was shut down, fieldcraftsurvival.com. Try to log on it right now, it's down. So that's where he sells his goods. I mean, he has people that work for him. This is his livelihood. It's not some small endeavor. I mean, he has a large warehouse, and I mean, he has so much that he's personally put into this, and the credentials. He's been interviewed, ABC, CNN, all of these things, and basically was perceived as spreading information that, I don't know, could be perceived as inciting violence or incomplete. I'm not trying to speak negatively of Mike. I don't understand, but I'm just conveying he was deplatformed. I never had that perception from any of Mike's content that it was introducing into anybody's mind a thought to go ahead and to introduce harm to somebody, especially in some kind of manner that wasn't as a result of trying, non-aggression principle. I mean, of course, he's sharing, if you are being attacked at home or, whatever, here's some things to consider, ways to make your property safer. But I mean, there's a lot of people out there that do that. What was the cause that got Mike deplatformed? I don't know. But to me, it's an eye opener because I would have, looking at Mike's site, looking at Mike's content, I was like, this won't happen to Mike. And it did. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about regression to mean here at the start. Then, because something has happened really fast with regression to the mean, and I'm going to need to update my graphic. We're going to talk about school funding, what it means under a Biden administration. So as a former school administrator, I have some, I think, very accurate predictions on what we'll see here in the first 100 days of the administration, and what the initial kind of legislation would be that would come out that would impact schools. There will be some areas that will be significantly different than a Republican administration. And yes, I know that we haven't had a certified election yet. I'm going off of the presumption that that Joe Biden will be sworn in as president of the United States. And then I want to talk about AOC's list of truth and reconciliation, basically saying, is somebody putting a list together of people who have donated to Trump or the Republican Party, who have, written maybe favorably articles, I guess anything that somebody has done where they've been associated, either with Donald Trump or with higher levels of the Republican Party, and make this list public. And then somehow this list would be cross-checked, right, by citizens. If you're potentially hiring somebody, you could cross-check to see if they were on this list, and what this means. All right. So the fact that she said this, nobody else in the party has come out to oppose it. What this really would mean and how fast this could develop, and what it would mean for people then identified on this list, and also what that has to do with something called social credit score. And this is starting to fall into place pretty fast on how I thought it would. Not that I could see the future on this, but if we did get to something like this, this pattern develops very rapidly. We're also starting to see people overtly go and make statements on YouTube saying that they now are, this is basically disassociation, right? Like that I no longer, or I see the errors in my ways with the previous or the current administration, which will be exiting. I am, basically saying to the incoming administration, don't put me on a list, and, consider me. Obviously, there's things, if grant funding, jobs, all of these things. I don't know. I've got some interesting, I think, perspectives. One is actually even HVAC systems. All right. I'm going to get into why I think this election is going to have a big impact on HVAC systems. And it's not probably what immediately we're coming to mind as we're going to have some super HVAC system. But let's get into it. Let's kind of systemically go over this. So get on Gab. So yeah, let me catch up here in the chat a little bit. Red, just walking my bike route. That's not a bad idea. We do have some trails around here. The thing is, we've had a few hard freezes, so I could walk the trails without having to deal with the bugs, which would be nice. I bike on country roads, so just to walk along the side of the road in and of itself isn't very exciting. But I think you've got a couple good ideas for me to be out there. But so yeah, David was saying the jackboot of censorship is happening. So for the first time today, I went onto YouTube and I started to get notices when I would go to videos, and it would pop up and say, "Are you sure that you want to watch this video because it has violent content," or something to that effect. Never had this happen before. These aren't videos that are out of the scope of what I've watched in the past. Actually, some of these are having to do with like military campaigns of the Civil War. And really part of it's just an interest, and part of it is to inform some of the work that I'm doing with writing. So, looking at, okay, what were some of the campaign statements that were said at different times during the war, and how did that work with the population, right? In the North and the South, to try to make a population either motivated or stop languishing or something like that. So it goes along with my work. But I'm going to just pause right there. Here's my book, School of Errors, Rethinking School Safety in America. And yes, school safety, but so much more. Chapter 1, how thinking about a bagel can get you through the worst day of your life. I have a chapter in here talking about the Cajun Navy, how the Cajun Navy participated and manifested the rescues for Hurricanes Katrina, Harvey, and Irma. And I think that the Cajun Navy concept can play a big role if we do have some type of governmental breakdown at any time now. I was kind of thinking, what would happen if things did collapse and supply chains collapse, and we really would see a Cajun Navy would come into play. So, but yeah. So anyway, it is my birthday. Da-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. I say it's my birthday. Da-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. It is my birthday. Da-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. Yeah, it's my birthday. So, wow. Joe's indicated they're openly calling for the abolition and rewriting of the Constitution. Yeah, I am, I guess not surprised by that. I don't know. So I was watching Scott Adams, Dilbert, Scott Adams back in end of May, early June, when intense riots across the country. Close to where I'm at, it was Madison, Wisconsin. Scott was saying at that time, it'll be, a decade or two before there's a discussion about gun control, right? About telling, people either, for example, you have to register your guns, or there'd be an outlawing of guns, because at that time, people were seeing what was happening. Streets were being taken over, businesses looted, people being, pulled out of cars. And so that was less than 6 months ago. And I perceive that agenda is back on, right? That agenda will be coming out of the Democratic presidency, probably within the upcoming year. I mean, right? Because when, Joe was campaigning, it was register your guns. There would be an annual fee for different type of weapons. So basically, it's like registering your car, kind of, right? So you'd have to have some kind of tag, right, to have whatever weapon or whatever magazine, and basically would be putting this tax threshold on where it would be prohibitive to keep without technically outlawing. You can keep this, right, but you have to pay whatever. And if you don't keep this currently registered, then it's a violation. So we went from, I think that discussion being completely off the table 4 or 5 months ago to now being very much on the table, at least from a Democratic platform. So this gets into the whole regression to the mean, velocity of information. I'm just over here. I've got 3 monitors. How fast information can change right now. And, this is par for the course if we look at what is called the velocity of information since March, that things really swing substantially one way or another. So I'm bringing up a diagram, which I'm going to use to help us kind of get through this. Here we go. And okay, so I've got it up on a side screen. I'm going to make it a little bit larger. I'm going to pull it up over here, but let me check over here in the web. David wrote, has anyone noticed that the panic over COVID-19 disappeared today with thousands of Biden supporters dancing in the streets, all crunched together? Yeah, right. I mean, we haven't seen that. It's actually, pushed off of the headlines. And here's something to watch in the next week, 2-3 weeks, when the news comes on, right, or ABC News, right, at night, how much time that they spend on the coronavirus. So what I've seen now in the last couple of days, well, obviously you would expect the election to be center stage, but it's mostly an updating of this many cases and counts and whatever, and then it's moving on to these other stories. So you're just not going to have a pickup on this unless you have a mandate of a national mask mandate, right? Which Joe Biden, was in the campaign ads, we need a national mask mandate. And I was thinking, well, the thing is with that, right? One, whatever science you can dispute, but let's just say this happens. There's a national mask mandate. Who's going to enforce this mandate? Like, who is going to do that? Because we still know at a local level for the most part, and I think, Joe, you wrote about this, maybe you can put in the chat to clarify, but at a local level, I mean, it's the sheriff that's going to make that determination, and a lot of sheriffs are saying, we just don't have, we don't have the workforce, one, and we also don't believe that this is in the time of a stressed relationship with our populace, that this is what we want to do, right? We don't want to add this strain to it. And also the fact of, like, most people are compliant. You tell them wear a mask, they'll wear a mask. And the social distancing, most people are doing that. So here's the thing. So Biden, when you run on something that pretty much everybody is doing anyway, like I'm running on everybody wears their seatbelt campaign. Well, it's pretty easy to do that because most people will just wear the seatbelt if it's there for the most part, right? You don't have to have this major campaign because you've already gone through whatever education there is. And again, I've seen, much conflicting science, right, on this, but let's just assume for the moment that this, there is a scientific, method to say, doing this is going to we believe will have a substantial effect. I mean, nobody's perfect in real time, but let's just say that that's the argument. You probably would get most people to go along with it. So to come out and to say, I would declare this national mask mandate is pretty obvious, like, right? It's like saying, we'll declare everybody will wear seatbelts. I mean, when you do things where you don't, you'll have some people, right, that would argue that, but for the most part, you already have people accustomed to that. So, all right, 1, 2, 3. I think the show will progressively get better here. Hang in there. All right. We're going to top the hatch. All right. Okay. So let's get back to velocity of information. I'm going to change up the screen. So what you're going to see right now is a diagram of the velocity of information. Share the screen. Here it is. And I'm going to describe this. Okay, so what you have in front of you right now is a diagram that I used in a previous podcast. This is actually the premise for my book, The Velocity of Information, the book I'm writing right now. And let's just do a recap right here. So over here, this was before coronavirus. So this is, before March 13th, 2020. We remember this time largely as a utopia. It wasn't, of course, but we remember it better than it was. So immediately media gets on. What do we hear? And we hear this, virus is going to sweep across the country. We're going to be in short supply with ventilators. Remember that? It was ventilators, N95. We don't have enough masks, but also hospitals needed ventilators, which proved not to be accurate. But people went crazy. They went to the stores, bought out toilet paper, hand sanitizer, soup, pasta. I remember being at the store at night, grocery store. My wife and I were tag teaming. She was, going there in the day. I went at night. And I just remember people, it was like a meteor was going to hit the earth. I mean, I was talking to a guy probably like in his 20s, and like a case of beer on his shoulder. He's like, well, this is it. I'm going out and style. I mean, everybody kind of had this weird, almost like a kindness and genuineness. I mean, people weren't fighting over things, but it was like everybody just anticipated this was out of their hands. The way the media had portrayed it, all this information came out. A week from now, who knows if any of us would be around? It was crazy. So we have to understand chaos to understand this discussion. Most of you do, right? Like, you follow my work and you're sharp, and I appreciate that. But so obviously people play this back. There's some people new to my work. We have something called a torus, T-O-R-U-S, torus. Torus means that largely, okay, we can have predictable days. Today will be similar to yesterday. Tomorrow will be similar to today. Torus, and that's how we function. Torus is something also we're hardwired to accept. So if the power goes out, for 10 or 15 minutes, we're just going to be like, it'll come back on. We don't go to that second level thinking of, well, maybe there's something more significant that's going on here. Maybe I need to do a little investigating, try to figure out what's going on. We just kind of accept things. When things start to go away from our torus, like if you're out of power for 2 or 3 days, then we start to get more frantic or frenetic. What happened with the coronavirus, forced compliance, right? Okay, it's a stay-at-home order. It's a shelter in place, safer at home. That starts to have cognitive dissonance, or where people start to get very nervous. They don't understand. They can't grapple with why has my routine fallen apart? Because of this new forced compliance, which we had. You have to wear a mask. You have to be 6 feet away. Schools are closed down. Businesses are closed down. The hours that you can shop have now changed. All of this coming out. And a lot of that's new information too. You're getting new information coming in. All of these terms are starting to come in. Flatten the curve, safer at home, N95. So starting to overwhelm people. So we get in here into the end of March. The velocity of information. This is a scatter. It's like basically it's just getting thrown out there. The media, the local media is just repeating what the national media is saying, and they're just getting it out to you, right? They're just stumbling. They don't know what the terminology is. It's just absolutely crazy. So it's getting out there. But then, end of March, a couple of weeks later, this is when all of us got those emails from all the companies. Hey, Calvin Klein or whatever, like, hey, we just want you to know we appreciate you as a customer, and we're here for you and stuff like that. I mean, it's virtue signaling, but things get more target. Local news starts to cover local issues that have to do with the coronavirus. Start to interview local hospitals, stuff like that. So velocity of information, initially, it just is this crazy throwing out of information. Nobody knows what to make of it, including the local news broadcasters. And then it gets more targeted toward the end of March. We have all these new terms that we have to incorporate, and we move those from our vocabulary to our lexicon, about 15 terms in all. Which is really a lot. In 2017, the only term we moved from a vocabulary to lexicon was spaghetti map. So anyway, a lot of stuff's going on. Wet bulb effect. People are getting saturated with information everywhere they go. All the notices, everything they're getting in the mail, all the signs they're seeing when they're going out. And we hit this thing called finite voltage at 90 days where people just kind of lose it. When you get to finite voltage, if you're not going to return to quote unquote kind of normal to our torus after 90 days, a lot of people will exhibit crowd-in behavior, and that's when you buy things that make you feel good. We saw this manifest at stores were selling out of puzzles, out of video games, out of interior paint, canning supplies, blankets, pillows, things like that. And a lot of those things have to do not with scarcity. You're not buying out all of the pillows because of scarcity. You're buying them because they make you feel good, or the video games. So here's something to know. When you cross finite voltage with crowd-in behavior, basically crossing the streams and Ghostbusters, this is very bad. This indicates that people are frazzled. They are out of their routine. Things aren't coming back to a routine. It's like, every day when they get up, they don't know, is there going to be another announcement? Have the hours changed at my local store? Can I not do something else? Has another venue closed down? Someone's tested positive for COVID. Okay, so now my kids are back home for 2 weeks at school because somebody in their class. All of these things are happening, right? My bank now has shut the lobby down. This stuff is out of stock at the store. I can't get it in. So people around August hit this point when they didn't know when things would get back to quote unquote normal or a torus, or kind of similar. And that's really dangerous. That's a bad psychology to be in. As a civilian population, it was probably the early 30s through about the start of World War II when people were in this mindset. And there's numerous interviews, which I'm incorporating in the book, where they interviewed people, 1933, 35, and they're like, this will never get better. Life sucks. I hate this. This is horrible. And you could still, get out and largely, connect with nature, work in fields, do things like that. I mean, you didn't have the social media aspect that we have today where, any news you were getting was coming word of mouth or coming, largely either through the radio or through newspapers. But so it's the velocity of information, was much, much slower before it kind of got real targeted. You can hone this in super fast now, as we've kind of seen, and this will only get quicker. But anyway, so we're in this really bad place of crowd and behavior. So present day, what happens? We're over here in present day, and we have something up here called failure to regress to the mean. So this is all my stuff. Like, I'm not pulling this out of a book. I've created this. I'm writing this book based upon much research I've done and so forth coming into this. But anyway, we have this term called failure to regress to the mean, which means when you cross finite voltage in crowd and behavior, that point forward, the only way to describe that is failure to regress to the mean. Basically, failure to regress to the mean. If you you're a baseball player over 162 game season in the major leagues, if you have 2 weeks where you are hitting 2 home runs a game and your on base percentage is 800 or something like that, that's just not going to last, right? You just know. But it's something called positive recency, where people believe that if something happens, it will happen again and again and again. It's like the hot hand theory in basketball, or sports. Someone, they've got the hot hands. So what they actually do is they keep feeding them the ball more, so they have more opportunities of kind of a volume performance. So the thing is that, so we have this, it kept going off the chart, right? You're not regressing. I gotta bring this back so you can actually see me. Stop sharing. Okay. So what's happening is this is normal, right? This is typical every day. There really isn't anything as normal. There's things like similarity, like things are similar, but days similar. So you want to get back to this, most people, right? You want to get back to when the power's on, when you don't have to wear a mask, when the stores are stocked, all of that type of stuff. You want that. And the more you're into this finite voltage crowd and behavior, you will work even harder, like, to get that. You will give up stuff to get that, right? So if I have to get a vaccine, yeah, fine. Like, this is what people will say. I'll go for it if I can get a vaccine so I don't have to wear a mask and I can visit my relatives. I'm for it. Social credit score, which I'll bring up in a little bit. Tom Scott has did a nice presentation on that. It's under three minutes, but I'm going to tell you social credit score. If someone says, yeah, I don't care, track my cell phone, track my purchases, let me know if I've gotten too close to someone with COVID and if I have to self-quarantine. But if doing that lets me get back to normal, sure. These are very dangerous things. Once you do this trade-off, the social contract thing, to try to regress to the mean, if you think you can cut these deals or be part of these deals to regress to the mean, first of all, it doesn't really work that way. It's an illusion, but it is a good way for people in power to get you to go along, because if they're saying, well, if you do this, things will get back to normal, and you liked it when things were back at normal, right? You liked when the end caps had things on them at Walmart and you didn't have to wear a mask and your kids were in school and all of these things, and NFL stadiums were full and stuff like that. Like, you like that, right? Well, here's what you can do to get back to that. But the thing is, like, there was no plan to get back to that. Every day was just kind of going more wonky. Like, were we going to go back into an additional lockdown? We had more areas in stores didn't have goods. What were things going to look like? So we weren't regressing to a mean, meaning before the election, nobody had any idea when things would kind of start coming back to the mean. In time, everything comes back to the mean in time. So if we draw out over 100 years, over 1,000 years or whatever, things find a way to adjust to a mean. Or statistically, it's kind of like, if you're rolling dice, and if you roll one dice and you get a 1 and you get it 17 times in a row, well, if you roll that dice another 100 times, it's going to adjust to a pretty typical statistical line, right? It's going to come up with a 2 and a 6 and stuff like this. But we get into this whole thing. It's called positive recency. I've talked about this before. But positive recency, I did a podcast on this. We start to think this will never end, what we're in. We also weren't coming back to a mean like a week ago. So I think that's one of the reasons now that I'm really trying to process through the election. I didn't anticipate one, that Biden would win. I was kind of I was in the camp where Scott Adams was. I didn't think the polling was accurate, and I didn't anticipate, the election turnout. I think some of the election turnout was simply convincing people through very carefully watching the ads that were coming in, stuffing in my mailbox and on TV and things like this, was some sense of, of returning to regressing to a normalcy, right? There was some, I'm going back and I'm looking at that. I'm kind of seeing like that was a subtle tactic that was being used. A vote in and we'll have a regression, even though you can't promise any of this, but this was kind of the message that was coming out. So what happens? So we have the election, and because the results are drawn out, it takes a lot of steam out of if there's going to be riots and things like that. People they're just deflated with that. And also I think people are like, well, we anticipate that we aren't going to have a lot of big swings. We believe that this election has changed our trajectory from going up kind of into chaos back to a regression to the mean. And so this is, I think, a perception. Whether it's accurate or not, I'm not here to look out and make that. But I think, people are like, okay, we're going to have a lot of domestic spending. We're going to have a huge stimulus bill. Which you will, right? That will typically be a model of the Democratic government coming out with a massive stimulus bill. I remember as a school administrator when the bill came out with President Obama, and it was, I forget what the name of it was, if anyone wants to put down there, but yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not putting your stuff up here, but yeah, I had ERA Recovery Act dollars, but I had, as administrator, I had hundreds of thousands of dollars at my disposal to use on a number of things. And I bought, new vans for the school district and other things, and renovations in buildings and things like that. It was all, I was a good steward, obviously, of the dollars, but it was like, where else can we spend these dollars with the limitations that were on them? You couldn't add staff or something that once the dollars were gone, you'd have to pick that up on your own, local costs. So you weren't adding staff, you were buying, buses and vans and equipment and stuff like that. But so anyway, I think people right now are like, okay, they've crashed. They were just fatigued, right? You can't stay in the state of chaos of the cross streams very long. Something's going to happen that'll bring you back. And I think it was this election and the fact that it looks like Joe has won it, which has brought people back now. So part of that is it's people just wanted that, right? They just wanted that. So they read that in of, if we get this, we're going to get this level of spending. We are going to get an increase in unemployment, checks payments that had been delayed because, that didn't get passed before the election. So I think we have regressed to the mean for a while. And we also have regressed to the mean that we haven't had substantial, at least televised, right? Riots and looting across the country. So the media has regressed to the mean. So I think that's part which is very interesting to note. The media, the news media has regressed to the mean. meaning their coverage of what is happening is getting more similar to what it was back in maybe a January and a February. And I would say, largely what will be put forward by the Democratic Party for legislation would be very favorably portrayed by the media, whether it's sound legislation or not. Like, it just will be portrayed as this is something that is regressing us to a mean, or getting people back toward a normal. People sense that. If people feel that, if the media tells them you are going back to a mean, a lot of people will just believe it, right? Because they just believe what is shared in the media. And they'll just be like, okay, yeah, we've made it through the rough patch. We've felt the crossing of the streams. It feels different now. And so, this is kind of what's happening. So this is like one part of it, right? This is one part of it. So let me cross this off, regress to the mean. It's my birthday. Everybody's wishing me a happy birthday. So Dewey defeats Truman. Yeah. Hey, Joe Bacon. It was fun while it's lasted. So Joe had indicated, I'm going to go back. Joe indicated they're going to use the virus order to keep a new lockdown to keep resistance off the streets. Yeah, I would anticipate that. And I would anticipate, well, we already know that there will likely be like a national mask mandate. The question is then, how do you, if you don't have compliance with that, do you tie that in with funding, right? Do you tie that in with part of a bill that comes to state and local of saying, well, if you do choose locally to not enforce this, we will withhold funding to your community from a federal level. And so I don't know. I think we're going to see some legislation crafted that is going to have a lot of those conditional type of statements on it. So, hey, welcome, Sass Too Many. Hey, it is my birthday, everybody. All pro Leamington. It is my birthday. So glad to be here. Markergate is a serious winning no. It's gonna snow tonight. Oh my God. Anthem, wow. And it's like 62. It's gonna be in the 70s for us here tomorrow, which is just gonna be great. So school funding, how is this going to impact school funding? First, a sip of knowledge. Sass, thanks for the birthday. So this one says 1995. I celebrated my birthday at Nitty Gritty Bar in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. So I got this on my birthday in 1995. Stevens Point, Wisconsin. So it's been with me a long time. All right. School funding. So I think we're going to see a huge school funding bill that will come out very quickly from the Democratic administration, and it's going to be different. So it will be focused on anything to improve if antivirus, antibacterial, HVAC aspects of schools. So buildings, construction to give more portable spaces or more adaptable spaces in schools, all of those types of things. So this is similar to what happened in school after school shootings, funding that was coming out from states, largely not so much from the Fed, to schools saying, put in bollards, put in bulletproof films for windows, even though it's interesting now, like some of these schools that have window films on all of their first floor windows, you can't open the window after that, right? Once it's put on. And now some of these schools are needing to open the windows in order to have enough air circulating through the building. So they're actually compromising these systems that they put in place, but it's just crazy stuff. So anyway, here's the thing. Like, what if Biden would have come out and said, maybe like in the last 40 days, like this would have been after school starts, right? So, somewhere between September and the election, he comes out and he says, we are going to, if I'm elected, we are going to invest in our school safety as far as antivirus. We're going to put funding out there for improved HVAC systems, right? You'd have to do this at a layman level so people kind of understood it, but you could do that with enough graphics and stuff like that where it wouldn't be hard for people to kind of get the idea. And then you also do something, say, and everybody working from home right now with your furnace filters and your filtration in your apartment buildings or condos, like we are going to give grants to or like a tax credit. So if you're renting, because remember this whole thing of like renters aren't making payments on time and these rental holidays. Well, you could have reached out to the people that own these properties and say, you upgrade your HVAC systems and you have some conditions in place like Energy Star, but it's like for HVAC filtration. Again, not that this stuff actually would ultimately improve the conditions, but it's something that would have been very marketable. People would have understood that, and I think it would have shown that you're attending to the science. And then you could have said, listen, like we also know we have mold in buildings, mold in homes. And, because of flooding, natural disasters, people have been impacted. They could show empathy. People with wildfires, smoke coming all around, people have, sensitivity. We are going to make it possible for you, schools, businesses, homeowners, to improve your HVAC systems or your filters or filtration, and we'll give you tax credits or some subsidies directly for schools like to do this, right? And that would have been a big sell. Like, people would have been completely on board with that, because you say when the virus is gone, right? All of this is behind us. We still have improved systems for everybody out there. You're going to be breathing cleaner air. And we know with things like, dust, environmental or whatever, I just think it would have been a really keen approach for Joe to take, right? I didn't see any of this really coming out of the camp of Trump and his campaign, that they would have gone in this direction. But I wouldn't be surprised to see this become part of the Democratic package, the CARES 2 or whatever. And this is the way to get money to the schools, because people aren't going to be as hip as saying, directly funding teachers or funding whatever. So they put it into some other package of saying, do this. This will then allow you to infrastructure upgrades in schools of your windows, of HVAC, of doors, of other things that you probably didn't budget for anyway or didn't have the money for. So I think that's going to be there, HVAC. So what is it? All right. So is that apple juice? Yeah, it is apple juice. You got me, Atham. It is. And then Bacon wrote, Sock's birthday, he chooses to spend it with us. You bet. So actually, I am glad to do this show tonight. Did have a very nice birthday with my family. But yeah, felt like I had enough time to think through the last few days after being on the marathon episode election night with Nick August, where Bacon and the Rifleman and I think we were the ones that kept that going. But I needed time to kind of figure out what really had happened. So as most of us, right? Like, the Sharpies versus like people, putting window coverings up so you can't see who's counting a vote and all this other weird, bizarre stuff. I don't know. What would be a great present? Get Doc's channel monetized. That would be a great present. Somebody, give me up to 1,000 subscribers. So there's good content on this channel. Please subscribe. If you have other channels you can subscribe from, or just like let your friends know or whatever, like just please do that. Sast wrote, Doc operates on a level above the average American, sorry to say, but most people aren't capable of sentient thought. Yeah, I appreciate that. Everybody in the chat, Sass, Bacon, I've much respect. I really appreciate what you bring, and I think about it, right? And it really shapes how I frame what I'm working with. And I really appreciate a comment like that. It also is a reality, right? There's some frustration with that, and there's frustration, I'm sure, with a lot of you. when you try to have narrow discussions with people who just aren't willing to have that discussion with you on like this type of stuff. They just don't, it doesn't conform to their bias, or they just don't want to learn more about stuff, right? It's like, well, this is what I know from Fox News, or this is what I know from the, Drudge Report. I'm just going to go with it. And we've lost that ability for debate. So this is where I really value having especially the chat up, where we can go back and forth and get some of this out there, because this is deep stuff. If we, and it's critical, because just look at what's happened in the last few days. And now, if we have, let's say, a $5 trillion stimulus package, which is kind of the number that I'm getting when I look at what's, county to state to, national mandates to possibly education, that's like $17,000 a person of additional debt. I mean, like, how, and these numbers are so obscure, right? Like, and you start to get these weird vibes. Like, I remember when I was, early voting, where, my voting impacted what was happening. So if I'm, living here and I vote for a referendum, I have to pay the taxes but people just don't think that way. They vote stuff in without thinking about the consequences. Numbers become very abstract to people. People aren't good stewards of money. And, we had here, neighboring district, over $300 million in school referendum, passed. And it's a tone deaf thing, because you have a community which has, the district lost 1,000 kids, by the way, that, I'm referencing. So they decreased, but they also had substantial hits in the community and big bankruptcies and things like that. So, but yet you don't change you don't lay off, you don't have austerity measures. And we see that as a country now, right? What is the difference between, well, if we pass a $5 trillion bill or a $10 trillion bill, it's abstract. I mean, it's completely abstract for all of us. And who's going to make you pay it back? You can say, oh, Venezuela, there'll be hyperinflation. Probably not, because until somebody challenges the U.S., right, which could be China, but it looks like it would have to be China. I mean, Japan's economy is not as strong as it was even a year ago. But who's going to, if someone doesn't challenge you, you can just keep, using this. And, I think you can say, well, cryptocurrency could start to play a factor in this. Yes. And I think that's accurate. I think there's been some delay in cryptocurrency with what the Fed just took $1 billion from Silk Road, which had been put in some account, and they were able to confiscate that money. I think they got the information from the person that had it, but anyway, so yeah, that could start to come into play, I guess. But for the short term, I mean, we have the biggest military. There's no one who's going to kind of knock us off the block. So you can do stuff like this, but it will have consequences. Like, this whole thing regressed to the mean. You just can't spend and create money without a consequence. There will be a consequence, and at some point, that consequence would have to be austerity measures, or it would manifest as interest rates. So a home loan would be 10 or 15% back, like it used to be. Interest rates, a 5-year CD, would be 7-8%. Things like this would start to come into play to put some reflection on the currency that's out there, what is really happening for inflation. But it's not happening right now. Like, we're totally out of whack with this. And that's where, again, we get to this whole regression to the mean. At some point, this does start to have to regress and fall back in. So we talk about this HVAC. Student loans. This is the thing I was most concerned about with a Democratic victory, would be basically the clearing of student loans. And I think it's happening. I think, so let's, Sast wrote, the 95% are two-type zombie, nerfs and drones, explanation in the coming weeks. Yep. That night I drank rum and gin. Yeah. That was a good night. Bacon and Rifleman and I kept that one going. Yeah, Bacon. What was it? At the end of the show, it just went silent, and then Nick's bandwidth got eaten up his StreamYard account for the next like 4 years. SAS, their minds clam shut like a steel trap. Yeah, there are more people who just are completely unwilling to debate or talk about things. I noticed that at the university level. So I shared, it was a year ago, almost exactly a year ago, I went and guest lectured. I was asked to guest lecture at a major university, which is pretty typical. I've been on PBS and some other things. And so I did this specific presentation for the university. They'd asked me to come in and talk about how people with disabilities, the interface between people with disabilities and like safety legislation, right? So it was a good presentation. I was glad to do that. But what was interesting, I got in to give the presentation, and the prof that was kind of in charge of putting all this together. This is a gratis thing too, right? So like, I'm not even getting reimbursed for parking. It is kind of just, it's a gift. So prof pulls me over and says, well, I wanted to make you aware of something that we've changed at the university. I said, well, what? Well, we give people the option to leave the presentation if they feel anxious or just need time to process kind of what the presenter's saying. I said, okay, so SPD has black units standing by Capitol Hill. Something might go down. Okay. Yeah. Bacon wrote, so Seattle Police Department has blackout units. Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be bumpy the next few weeks, and it's just I don't think it's going to be reported, right? I just don't think we're going to see the media focus on this. The media has a vested interest in portraying that this is a smooth transition, and so your member networks like Bacon right now, who is on the ground and knows this area and knows a baseline, can provide it. Just had a pop in the chat for a second. Happy birthday, Doc. Hey, thank you to my good friend from the lower part of the state. I'll be watching from the PS. Great stuff as always. I appreciate that. Please. Yes. And know also the Doc is making a run in fantasy football. I could be up in the standings this week. SAS too many. CT will not cut spending or operating costs in any way. I expect huge increases in taxes and fees and new tolls. Yeah, I agree. The thing is, right, so taxes will increase, tolls, everything else that can be taxed will increase. So at what threshold do you get where people don't pay? And, kind of the Laffer curve, right? We have a community next to us. I would have never seen this happening in this community. It's a place we considered living when we moved here. And, it's about the same size as a community I live in, basically 10,000 people. And through their change of government in this 10,000 people community and some other things, basically a lot of people, more than half, don't pay their water bills now in this community. They just stopped. And the community and local government have said, well, we're not going to enforce it, So suddenly more people aren't paying their bills. And now they're larger employers, industries, retail and stuff are saying, well, don't look at us to pick up the tab. Like, you just can't have people decide not to pay their bills without consequences. And then this whole thing of people selling their house and the buyer's not responsible to make whole on the previous debt. And I'm like, I can't believe this is happening 15 miles away from where I live in a place I didn't think would go this route with politics. But it shows you too, at a local level, you start voting in a couple people at a local level who have some agendas or really are kind of new, or they're just not vested. They can come up with stuff, and pretty soon it just unravels. Like, it goes really crazy. So Chest, happy birthday. I appreciate it, buddy. Appreciate that. Bacon, I tossed a couple of zombies today. Wow. Yeah. I know Joe had a really crazy day from watching what he was sharing on Twitter. So Juan, it's been crazy out here. Yeah, Juan, maybe tell us a little bit more about that. So yeah, so I think student loans, which to me is honestly frustrating, because I mean, I paid for my, university. I did. I mean, I had some. Once I get into my PhD program, I had some fellowships that I was awarded through the university that I had to apply for. But those are like standing, you know. Anyway, a fellowship it pays for like a semester, for like a year or something like that, and it's people who have donated money to the university, and you apply, and what is like one of them was specifically for safety or something like that. I don't know, but anyway, I'm saying I paid, right, and if I guess I can see some forgiveness maybe, but I just don't see this blank slate. Like, how do we make whole to the lenders? Do you just write from the taxpayers a check to the lenders and say, here you go? Or do you give people credits on their taxes until their debt is amortized over so many years on their taxes and it's gone? I mean, you made that agreement. I get so sick and tired of this. Oh, I got into this agreement, I didn't understand what it was. Well, I was a student. I also instructed at a university level. A lot of you knew what it was, and if you didn't, you should have asked. I mean, these are the same people who are buying cars or having families and things like that, homes. You know what this is, and if it's not clear, then you ask. And the other thing is, I have friends at work, and loans at university, student loans, and there's people get their money, and you would tell them, this is how much you have for your classes and books, and then if you have money for that you can use for rental or other types of things, and of course, what are they buying? Like clothes and furniture and trips and stuff like that, and they're just running up these debts, or debts on the credit cards for this college experience. And now I think there is going to be this forgiveness, this holiday, and at what point then do we just basically say, well, university is going to be a public good, but then you're going to have private universities, which will become very desirable, because you're not going to have this substantially, I guess, watered down public experience of universities. I am very, that's a part. I just believe if you've taken out, these debts, maybe again, there's some forgiveness, but I'm very apprehensive. I think there's going to be a full forgiveness given. I don't think it's going to happen right now. I mean, why would you do it right now? You just won. So you want to hold some things for that 2022, election, when, you've got some House and Senate seats, right? And you want to hold some of this for reelection. So you might do some and then hold that in for a pretty big bargaining chip, but you're going to see some of it now. You're going to give some relief. So I don't know. I'm a little irked on that. It's just, it's like if you bought a house, like I bought this house, and you paid for it over a number of years on your mortgage, and you clear it off, then somebody else buys a house. And in addition to buying a house, they're buying a car and subscriptions to Netflix and Hulu and Zulu and Ulu and all of these types of things, and trips, and there's run up debt, and they're not responsible. And, they're not making those sacrifices. I mean, I did a lot, as all of, all of us did. You make sacrifices, you make decisions on where you're going to spend your money. It's just really frustrating. So I think that's wide open right now. So let's see. What do we have here? Catching up. Bacon, I tossed a couple of zombies today. How's Joe? It's been crazy out here. It's Juan. Bacon, Joe, no kidding. You posted. Juan, I just think it's crazy that people think they're greedy for wanting to keep more of your money that's already been taxed. Yeah. I've been looking at my, our own fiscal situation as a family, and what the next 4 years likely means for that. And then beyond, and there'll be adjustments, that we'll have to make. But I do think obviously we're in for higher taxes, and higher corporate taxes will be passed on. And so I don't know. I think we are in for a situation of that. So Joe wrote, Bang Switch somehow found video of it and posted to Twitter. I even captured a trophy, Antifa pin. I saw that Antifa pin, Joe. Yep, saw that. One, I don't sign anything unless I fully understand what I'm getting into. Once I understand, I usually don't go forward. People don't want to accept that they made bad choices. Yeah, you're right. You're right. And, again, I remember in college so many times, every time you'd walk to class, there'd be people with tables set up and here, sign up for this credit card and we'll give you a t-shirt or a Badgers football or something like that. And it's like just stupid, right? And people would do it because, I got a t-shirt, look at this, or I got this. And it's just insane. But yeah, we don't teach people, or we don't have where it is, a more rigorous process, or that, you have to prove, I guess, that you are, maintaining certain GPAs and things like that. I don't know. I'm really fed up with that. Chester wrote, the government already insures those loans. They only have a reasonable duty to collect the debt. Biden created this problem with, So that's the thing, right? So basically, it just gets it just gets wiped off. It no longer is something that you would accept a receipt for. You wouldn't accept people to make payment on these loans. I would say that's a foregone conclusion. So with this election, I believe that will happen. So we also are going to see something interesting with the Secretary of Education. So Betsy will be gone, and there's been talk of possibly bringing in a head of a teachers union from one of, actually it was, I guess, kind of the battleground states. I know who the person is. I'm not going to say it though, but if that happens, and whatever happens, Betsy out, you'll see a rollback to a Biden era guidance, because I teach superintendent legal issues on this. It'll be anything that came out that had to do with like transgender students, for example. That will roll back to whatever came out during the the Obama administration. You will also see a heavy push against charter schools and a push against private schools. You'll see both as far as like vouchers given to private schools. A lot of that's done at a state level, but that was going to be expanded under President Trump. He had said that openly while campaigning, that the money would follow the student, and that will not happen under Joe Biden. And especially if who gets in as Department of Education at a federal level, you could have things coming out where there probably wouldn't be any expansion of vouchers at a federal level. And here's what happens is, if states expand and the Fed is in agreement, basically the Fed can say, you can expand it, but we will now withhold some federal dollars that we were going to give to you, state. So this is going to be this will get litigious and things like that. Corey DeAngelis, if you don't follow him on Twitter, is probably worth, I wouldn't say probably worth, he is. Corey's a really solid guy. Corey DeAngelis. Jesus, if anybody can, that's not even right. But anyway, Max Eden is somebody else to follow. So this will happen if you are involved at all with school choice. The next 4 years, expect that to be significantly limited. It won't be expanded. And I don't think there would be a contraction, because that would need to go to, for example, like a Supreme Court, which likely would not move on a subtraction of that. But you could definitely get some pressure from the Department of Ed saying, like this race to the top money. Remember that under, it's both Republican and Democratic parties in charge when that type of legislation has happened. But basically saying, we'll give you money, but you'll also have to follow these conditions. And one condition would be you're not going to expand, charter schools. You're going to see a big push too for unions to gain ground again, especially the Department of Ed will be for that. You're going to see more push toward teacher rights, as far as like, we won't go back to a school unless a school has met these 5 conditions. One is, like everybody has masks. We have a paid position as a sanitizer. This could be something that's funded, actually. I would expect we'll see things like this out of the stimulus bill, now that it will have a Democratic president leading it, Democratic team. You will see things like, we will pay schools to employ people who specifically clean high contact areas. And so you could have these like conditions, an HVAC system, and whatever, PPE for teachers. So you could have literally 4 or 5 conditions that your Department of Ed could mandate and say schools have to do this. Now, schools are local in control. So we don't have, for example, a federal government bill. We don't have a federal government law that says all schools have to lock their doors during the day, instructional time. That doesn't exist. So, but again, so this could come out and, okay, so Bacon's saying he's seeing in Seattle, is it Bacon, Antifa marching? So they're saying, so anyway, there could be these conditions that then are met, or judged not met for a school. They could be benchmarking to this federal standard, because we don't have it right now, right? There is no federal standard for when a school should or shouldn't open. It's to the state. States are really defaulting it down to the very individual districts. Here in Wisconsin, 421, they put it at the district level. I know that because I teach superintendents. It's exactly what they tell me. So what could happen, though? Department of Ed could say, here are the conditions, and if you meet these conditions, we will open up some dollars for you for additional technology, because if you have students that you're teaching remotely for part of the time, or to upgrade your technology systems, that can be really broad, right? But they might say, we're going to open up a state by state level, up to $500 million or $1 billion in technology, or whatever it is, or it could be more, whatever, if you do these things. So there can be a lot of like, we'll play along with it. We'll do it, like, right, because we want the money. So I think you're going to see a lot of that type of stuff. If you are a teacher, if you're an educator, this election turned out exactly as you wanted it to turn out for your, for the future of what will be funding in your schools, and also for a potential increase in teacher union rights and strength. Again, that's more of a local control thing. But hey, Conk, birthday bash. Yeah, it is the birthday bash. So Bacon wrote, an economically educated population raised too many questions. Current system, there's a reason not to be taught in schools. Yeah. So let me go with Mike Glover now. So let me bring up, I'm going to bring this up on another site. So for those of you not familiar with Mike Glover, well, let me try to bring up a lot of his stuff has been removed already. So, all right, I'm going to pull up his Instagram page just so you get a context for Mike Glover. So stay with me. Hey, if you haven't crashed that thumbs up button, I would do it. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so. Please tell other people to subscribe to my channel. If you haven't read or bought or left a review for School of Errors, Rethinking School Safety of in America on Amazon, please do so. It's been hanging around. But 32 reviews for too long. Needs to go up. So I'm going to bring up Mike Glover's page right now. Share screen, and here's Mike. Okay, so that's Mike's Instagram page, and so Mike is the owner of Fieldcraft, and basically says, living my prep life on YouTube, host CEO, Fieldcraft Survival Podcast, survivalist, outdoorsman, nerd, special forces, CIA. So anyway, Mike was basically deplatformed in the last 24 hours. So his Instagram, YouTube, pretty much everything. Well, I guess here's Instagram, right? But most of his stuff was taken down. Twitter. I mean, he gave a whole list of what had been down. Okay, so he wrote, "Big tech deleted 14 hours ago. My Instagram, Discord, Facebook, and now Shopify shut down my website." And he says, all for teaching survival and preparedness. So he lost, and this has happened a couple times. He's been targeted, but this is huge. So if you think of the survival community, Juan is writing, some San Francisco daycares aren't letting parents inside the building at all. It's crazy. Parents aren't even okay with this. Wow. So Mike Glover, and Mike has been interviewed. He's national media several times. So he was doing various classes, trainings. Mike's very transparent, very on the up and up. I learned a lot from his content, but he would do classes. Basically survival, how to use a firearm, right? Which you have a Second Amendment right to do, but how to prepare yourself on a mindset if something happens. And it wasn't focused on what if there's a takeover from the government. It was a general focus of situational awareness and how to build that strength, and also how to build fitness. So I was watching Mike's stuff. I was keeping apprised of what he was doing. I was very fascinated. I thought he was a very level guy. Presented, he has employees, has a business, has a warehouse. I don't know if it was in Utah not Utah. I think it was Idaho where he was out of. He had moved there specifically to start this business. Things were going well, and literally was shut down. Everything was shut down. His website was taken down. He said even his mom's Facebook account was taken down. And he doesn't have any access to any of his previous stuff. So, of course, he has this thing saved and he can restart. But as he talked about, how long can you really do that? How long can you keep, booting your company back up after you are, deplatformed? It's not even demonetized, deplatformed. People, and then also this question starts to come up, right? So if people are wondering, wow, like Mike Glover, who works with the CIA as a contractor, very reputable military career, very intelligent, and Mike is not he's not cursing, he's not threatening, very intellectual. So I mean, Mike is kind of like a Bear Grylls type person, right? So a lot of these were just shows that you would have seen 5 years ago of the type of things that Mike does. And there's nothing wrong, right, with having classes to teach some survival things. He's not having a class to teach people how to overthrow a government or something like that. And so he was perceived as a threat by obviously some people. This is a coordinated takedown. So the question comes up: if Mike could be taken down, who else can be taken down? Who else is out there in the survival world, the prepper world, on that kind of fringe area of even like camping survival and stuff like this, that might be seen as, well, we don't want this person, we don't want them out, we don't want this message getting out there, so they're done. Actually, I saw something brand new here. Google just took his knowledge panel and took his claim off of his knowledge panel also. So this is just crazy stuff, right? So here's something else. All right. So Sast is saying he can see Mike's videos on YouTube. So I can see them now too. So I've seen the stuff back. So I'm going to go to a post that he made. Let me bring that up. Share screen, and right here. Okay, so look up here. Mike wrote, November 7th, 8:47 a.m. Big Tech deleted my IG, Discord, Facebook, and now Shopify shut down my website, all for teaching survival and preparedness. Where am I? And, he's got 681 likes, 22 quoted tweets, 136 retweets. So it gets into this real question, right, of who's next? Or, like some of my content. Now, I don't make a living off of this, but Mike does. Mike makes a living off of his site and of his courses. And it's not only that, Mike can bring this stuff back up. But now with AOC, right, Cortez coming out and saying, is somebody compiling a list of people who contributed to the Trump and campaign administration, who participated in any way favorable to the campaign, making a list of these people? The question is, do people start questioning, do they interact with Mike Glover? Do they purchase something from his site because is it being tracked? Now, I'm not saying this to try to steer people away from Mike. Again, I like Mike. I believe he's very transparent. I think he's terrific with situational awareness, very ethical. But is this what's happening? Is by deplatforming and having to force him to bring things back up again or to generate new sites, do you start to sow doubt into people's minds of saying, I don't know, if I associate with someone that's been deplatformed, am I now going to show up on some list that suddenly will become public? And what will that mean? What does that mean? None of us know what this means yet, although we know these lists exist. There's something called truth and reconciliation. I don't know if any, how familiar you are with truth and reconciliation, but what conciliation? So let me go just take over to the chat. Juan said, I'll take some pictures of a daycare by my job showing parents waiting outside for their kids. Okay. Bacon, any bets on when and why Morgan's site and socials will get bashed? I'm hedging it'll be over. So what Bacon is talking about, and I've kind of been careful of not to go too much into this, but I do want to mention Morgan's site. So I'm not going to bring it up unless maybe I will. I don't know. But so Morgan Prepared. I guess I will bring it up. Morgan Rogue. So Morgan is a preparedness expert, and Rogue Preparedness. Okay, I'm getting to her website so I can bring it up if it's in immediately. Here we go. Okay, so let me show you Morgan's website. So again, Morgan was a guest on my show. Share screen. This is Morgan's website, and this is roguepreparedness.com. Let me go to just the main website here. There we go. Okay. So this is Morgan's website. And let me get your Twitter announced once Trump leaves office, his Twitter will be suspended permanently. Wow. So this is Morgan's website. She was a guest on my show. Are you storing salt? What preppers should do? And she covered combat supply chain shortages and things like that. So again, I think Morgan is terrific. I appreciate her content. But could somebody look at this and argue and say, oh, this post here about combat supply chain shortages and showing empty shelves, this is inciting fear. So it's this whole thing, right, with hostile work environment. If somebody says at a company, hey, you are creating a hostile work environment, now HR has to come in and investigate that. And what does it really mean to create a hostile work environment? Like, are you not saying hi to somebody in the morning? These things start to become very vague. So, what if someone did look at this and say, this is conveying a very frightening image to people. It is encouraging people to go in and further clear out shelves because they believe there are artificial shortages. So let's see, things like make your own candle wick. This is all great stuff. Look at preparing for civil unrest. Okay, so could you make an argument on this post of saying, you click on where the post is of saying, this person is making statements which allude to civil unrest, getting people primed for this. So it's crazy, but that could happen. That could happen. That site could be taken down. I hope it isn't. And Morgan, I'm not trying to get your site taken down, but I want to start giving some benchmarks of once some of these sites start to go or be compromised. And Morgan did say she had some YouTube videos demonetized, and she also did lose a substantial number of subscribers in a short amount of time out of the blue. In the last few days. So let's go back to Cortez's list. There should be a list put together of people who have contributed to the Trump administration and whatever, participated in kind. That goes very close to what is known as Truth and Reconciliation. Actually, I'm going to go back up to Anthem. Anthem wrote, even Trump was heavily censored by Twitter. What can we as regular people expect to happen to us? Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, all of us will be either censored by algorithms or just censored by a growing number of people who are watching hashtags and making reports. I was shut down very quickly during the riots in Madison, Wisconsin, and the looting. And I was providing very spot on, accurate content from a professional opinion and from what was happening per the media portrayal. For example, media being young media, personnel being positioned way too close to very volatile situations. And I was done. I was taken off. My social media was all shut down. I think I know the organization that reported me. I did have one kind of back and forth on, and then a lot of my tweets were gone. Like pretty much all the stuff that I did that night was gone. I went on a podcast that was kind of compromised too. But yeah. So the question is. Let me go. Truth and Reconciliation. So what is that? So Truth and Reconciliation had to do with after World War II, basically making the Germans, for the most part, accountable for what had happened during the war, and then basically rewriting some elements of history, and then also making people who were and this happened in South Africa. There are different versions, but Truth and Reconciliation is basically trying to make accounting, making a list of people who contributed or could be identified as responsible for a certain period of time, which you deem as being adverse in different levels of severity to a society. So if you could say the last 4 years, the Trump administration was detrimental, 230,000 people died of COVID because, again, if you're making the argument that the administration didn't take COVID seriously, people contributing to it were contributing to this administration continuing, and they have some liability in this. So we're going to at least make them accountable and name by name, or companies, right? So this is scary stuff because it really prevents you from I guess, being overt in supporting any position which could lose. You're going to be very guarded on what you're sharing. So Truth and Reconciliation, what happens to these lists? They never go away, right? We're in a time when all of this is accessible. You could apply for a job somewhere and someone could type your name in, cross-reference and say, oh, you contributed whatever to this campaign, or you attended this rally, or you signed this recall effort for this Democratic governor. And there could be these layers which become kind of filters, right, for employers. And not only employers, it could be, hey, this business now, they support it. Look at Mike Lindell in MyPillow. So very overtly, Mike several times, visiting the White House and things like that. to say that this was a company and this was a person who was in support of a president who now, in retrospect, through this AOC type listing and eventual committee, which will come together, whether that be formal or not or privately funded, you're going to have people blacklisted. I mean, let's just say it, blacklisted, or university. I've already seen this happen at a university level. I've seen it in the last 24 hours. People at a university level presenting. So let me just get in. God, nose is itchy today. No, I'm fine. Something outside. Pretty sure everyone listening to this live is on a list. Thanks. I know I'm on a list. Yeah, I know I'm on quite a few lists. Rogue Preparedness, Bacon, definitely on that list. There's one reason why I never talk about any of my political ideologies. So I remember when you got shut out of Twitter that night. It was crazy. So yeah, so the AOC stuff is really crazy. No one coming up and saying absolutely we're not going to do this. And wouldn't you do that as an administration, right? Wouldn't you do that as a Biden-Harris? Immediately say we want to unify the country, and in this measure we do not support. Wouldn't you condemn that immediately, like tonight when they were on stage? Wouldn't you say, but they didn't, right? So this will happen. So we also get into this thing called social credit score, and it's in China. There's some level of it in Japan, but there is this strong likelihood that we will see in the next 4 years a social credit score in the U.S. We already have it, kind of, right? You already have a credit score, like you have a FICO score and all that stuff, but a social credit score. And I'm gonna bring this up, and we're gonna give this a try. And I don't know exactly how to do the audio, so it comes through on social credit. It's less than 3 minutes. This is a I've got it right here. Yeah. None. Good. But I know you're not going to hear it unless I do something with settings, cam, mic, audio default mic, audio, echo cancellation. All right, let me do this. I don't know exactly how to do audio so it comes through the. All right. Does anybody know how to do this? You're growing a goatee. Yeah, I'll be gone tomorrow. I should grow it out a little further. Okay, I'm going to move over here to share screen. Some screens let you share audio. Look for the share audio checkbox on the next window. Okay, share screen. This is the screen I want. All right. Share audio. Okay. Okay, be careful sharing audio if you have a guest. They will hear this. All right. Yeah, whatever. Okay, so let's do this. You should be able. This is 2 minutes, 52 minutes long. Let me know in the chat if you can hear the audio. Okay, so Tom Scott, you should be able. This is 2 minutes. Check out Tom Scott. Let me know in the chat if you can. He's been out there for like 10 years. He produces these little short videos. Should be really a high level figure. This video, imagine the timing on this video is perfect. Imagine you're in a great really a high level figure, okay, or any of kind of European Union type countries, timing on France, whatever. And this could actually be happening right now. So you put this together. And so this isn't actually whatever happening at the moment. This could actually be happening right now. This could be our reality in the next 1, 2, 3 years. I think it will be happening at the moment. This could actually be happening right now. This Andrew Echo. Okay, let me play this. So this 1, 2, 3 years. I think it will be happening at the moment. This could actually be happening right now. Andrew, are you able to hear audio? Let me play this. So this 1, 2, 3 years. I think it will be happening at the moment. This could actually be happening right now. Are you able to hear audio? Let me Okay. So I just cut it because you're getting it. But let me do this. I'm going to do it a different way because it is good. Let me do this. All right. Hang in there. Hang in there. Don't bail. Hang in there. Okay. I'm not going to share audio, but I am going to play audio and then I'll shut it down. So there should be no reverb on this. Okay. All right. I learned this from Bacon. Here we go.
From January, every citizen of England and Wales will have a new social credit score. Government and private companies may use your social credit score to make decisions about you. For example, your score could affect the deposit you're asked to pay when renting a home. It could also give you discounts when you're shopping, put you in the priority queue for a new passport, or help you access some healthcare services more quickly. Your social credit score is based on information that the government already knows: the electoral roll, tax payments, criminal records, property ownership, and travel history. If you want to increase your score, you can choose to share more personal information securely with our certified partner companies. Information like your credit card purchases, communications and health information from your phone, energy use data from your smart meter, and your viewing and listening history from streaming companies. That information helps our carefully selected machine learning systems trust you, your friends, and your family. Plus, you can get fun tips on how to increase your score on the Social Credit app. Your social credit score is also affected by the scores of the people you live, work, and spend time with. Everyone's score is public by default. You can check it on the Social Credit app so you can make informed decisions about your life. You can hide your score, but in some cases, this may cause it to drop. Some things like disruptive actions, hiding your data trail, or making decisions that harm others could lower your score over time. If this happens, you may find it harder to access certain government and private services. So if you have an old housemate, friend, or relative that you don't spend time with anymore, you may want to file a formal notice of disassociation on the Social Credit app. If you're a dual citizen of Scotland or any other European Union nation, then privacy laws mean we can't give you a social credit score. Because of that, your access to some government and private services may be limited. If you're a citizen of Google, Facebook, or another corporation, please refer to their support pages for advice. Social Credit Scores from the Department for Community and Culture, helping us to help you.
Okay, so as absolutely freaky as that is, and I think I've showed that one before. I mean, it's only 3 minutes long. Tom Scott on YouTube, but we're headed there. So think of the timing on this. If you were to put this out right now, and say you had a friend, right, and you're saying, "Listen, this just came out," and you cut the intro out of it, and just record it with your phone on a screen. You could show this to someone and say, "This is happening in January in Great Britain and France," and they would believe you. Like, they would completely believe you if you showed this to them. And we are not far from this happening in the U.S. And I think with this election, and especially this move toward truth and reconciliation and the list, I mean, so this whole disassociation thing, I have seen professors produce short videos and make them public, basically saying that, one, where they clearly stand is, with the Democratic Party and what the Democratic Party framework is, that they clearly stand with that, or if in the past they did stand with Trump and some of the Republican Party things, that they are now saying, "I've learned and I'm not affiliated with that anymore." I've seen this. Like, people are scared and people are overtly putting this out, hoping if this list comes to fruition or whatever, that somehow then this statement that they have made will exempt them from that list, or be something they can go back as an artifact and say, well, listen, yeah, I was, as many people, I was fooled because I didn't have, enough information. I was underinformed. I was manipulated by this massive propaganda machine. And now I'm going to work extra hard to make sure that I make up for that. I've seen that. That's extremely frightening, that level of manipulation with people. And certainly they're going to see templates for this, right? You're going to start seeing businesses who will put this out there, some statement on their business. And I mean, if I were asked to give advice on this, right, I would sit down and, you'd have to say, well, I was, there was this elaborate campaign. I wasn't informed properly, whatever it was. But think about it. I mean, some of these people, like, why would college professors do this? Well, their students are going to track what they've posted on social media, other things they'll find out about them. And they've got that going. If the universities are getting grant funding and someone has been overtly or not, I guess, very has been overtly affiliated with Republican Party in the past or whatever, that could compromise grant funding. It's just crazy to think about this, right? So, wow. But anyway, the social credit score thing, I think we're very close to. I think we've moved there with this election. To sell the social credit score would not be very hard. So let me update in the chat here. Sastro, too many, turning off my GPS and Bluetooth again. I'm getting a Faraday bag just to be sure. So yeah, one of the things I had too on my phone that I've never encountered before was the Snap Air. It's not internet based because I would have it, drawing off my network or off internet, and that was happening crazy, for about a week, and now it's kind of resolved itself. Sastro, they will get around that eventually. Bacon Man, 1984, 40 years later. Yeah. And now there's actually an app on my phone on the last upgrade, the regular upgrade, and there is a COVID tracking app that's part of the Samsung upgrade. I don't know if any of you noticed this too, but it didn't initially. I was going through and then I saw it and I'm like, well, what's going on here? And you can press and it will notify you if you've been in close proximity. All the stuff we talked about, like back in March, that would actually happen. It's just right there now. I guess it's an opt-in, but who really knows how much of an opt-in it is? Sastro, Faraday boxes block all radio signals. Thinking about doing that to my house. Yep. I'm officially re-educated. It's basically what we're kind of talking about. Andrew wrote, social credit is a more complicated version of the Marine Corps pros and cons. I've seen new Marines be judged based on number, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So, yeah. Daniel Kahneman, who was a Nobel Prize winner in social psychology, wrote about that. Got his book right here, Thinking Fast and Slow, where the military was getting things down to basically a number. Problem with that, many problems with that, but one problem with that is you're taking a very small sample of something and trying to then say this is how somebody will perform based upon this very small sample we've taken. Law of small numbers. It usually never works out if you have a small sample. So, few books I want to just note. One is Concrete Jungle by Clay Martin, and I bought this book a couple months ago. This one came out maybe, I don't know, April, May, and Clay was a Green Beret. I thought this book was extremely insightful. Clay mentioned several things such as, like, don't publicly announce your affiliations, right? Just don't put a bumper sticker on your car or other things that announce whether it be a political affiliation, sometimes sports, whatever, because you just don't know how people are going to respond to that now. And, you have a $500 deductible on your car. Someone sees something they don't agree with, they go up and they knock out your side window. There's your $500. So he was saying, just be very careful about in what you're wearing and stuff like that. Not to be cowardly, but just the fact that you have to be very aware of how people are perceiving you. Joe Dolio talks about this, and Bacon, so many of you in the chat also mentioned this, being very aware of how you are being perceived in the environment. This is the most recent book Clay released, Prairie Fire. I received it this week, so I had one quick read through it, so I'll read through it again. And he reiterates, not identifying your affiliations, and then gets much more prescribed as far as like how to work with other people in your neighborhood, in your town, if things kind of do hit the fan in different types of scenarios. So I'll give a better review on that book once I've had time to go through it. But Clay Martin, definitely worth a read. So reading here, Sast wrote, the device will log compass, headings, steps, turns, store data, and report back when online. So yeah, that's the thing, right? Like everything is tracked today. So you can get a subpoena and find where, someone's phone has been, someone's car has been, any point in time. Look at Solocator is the app that Joe Dolio uses. So, so there are similar, ways that you can easily just be tracked. Transactions. If cashless society, so when you buy something, there's a point in time when you've been there, that card has been used. So this whole of where you are at in privacy and things like that, and the number of surveillance cameras and things that see you, things that could contribute to a social credit score. And again, if you put this out there for people, and kind of blend it in, like give us information about where you're at, because we're going to use it to keep you safer when there's a pandemic. We will know if you've come in contact with people. We can let you know right away that you need to self-quarantine. Well, okay. Some people will go for that. Like they'll be like, yeah, I want to know, like if I was next to somebody and they tested positive and I was next to them 48 hours ago, so I'm going to self-quarantine or I'm going to get tested. But, what does this mean for employers and jobs? What does this mean if somebody says, well, I tested, I was just notified that I have to stay home for 2 weeks and I really can't do my job from home. I drive a bus, or I work, at the power plant or something like this. Not all of these things are going to be this smooth. And you can, this can go even further. Social credit score. What if, it's access to some medical records and these people who send in their DNA tests. Okay, this is my heritage and stuff. Well, what if there's a predisposer that's discovered in your DNA and someone says you're more likely to get cancer, or you're more likely to come down with this virus than someone that doesn't have this certain signature? So now you've just put yourself at risk from information you've shared, but you've done this maybe in order to get a higher social credit score. What does this higher social credit score mean? Does it mean, you get in the US, what would it mean? Cheaper flights, cheaper gas. Do you get to check out quicker? I don't know exactly what it would look like in the US, or tax breaks is probably how it would manifest. That you'd get certain incentives. But people could get pretty creative in how they did that. Or even like you could get access to Netflix or something. And if your social credit score was below whatever, you couldn't. Or even like how the speed of your phone would be, or certain things would be throttled or whatever. It would be largely inconveniences that would be built into your day. But it's scary, right? So what AOC is saying, Cortez, in putting this list together, We want a list of people who supported, Trump in the campaign. It's basically this truth and reconciliation list. We want to make these people, re-educate these people, or make these people pay. And the pay might just be public humiliation, right? But we want this list to be out there. But if there is a social credit score that's in the mix at some point, it's more likely to happen under a Democratic leadership than Republican, but I think it's very close to happening. This can all be worked into that. Okay, this puts you at a minus whatever points. You now have to do X, Y, X, Z activities to earn back to this baseline social credit score. So let's go. Sastro, too many good reminder. My legal advice can stay offline pretty long term, though. I need to get a phone to take the battery out of. Andrew wrote, I have an Afghan. Andrew, if you haven't subscribed to me on YouTube, this channel, please do so. Also at Twitter, SafetyPhD, at SafetyPhD. I have an Afghan service ribbon as a bumper sticker on my car, and a coworker asked me, why do you have a Mexican flag on your car? That's funny. My neighbors are from Britain, and they're elderly, and when they fly the Jack, right, if you didn't know what the Jack was, you could anticipate, you could look at that and say, maybe that's the Mississippi flag or something like that. I mean, it's the thing is, like, people just don't know. They're not interpreting this. Like in Madison, when the riots happened in Madison, at the state capitol, the statue of an abolitionist was torn down and thrown into a river. So, I mean, people will. It's this whole thing of you have to try to figure out how people are going to receive these things. It's this gray man. It's stuff like Joe Dolio talks about a lot. Even yourself, of what you dress. I mean, like what I'm wearing right now, like I would feel comfortable wearing this, to a lot of places, because I'm not going to be very. I would probably blend in. Like if I'm out. If I'm doing vacation somewhere and I wore a shirt like this could be something like a local might wear, or it could be something that I'm wearing vacation. Now, if I wore a shirt that had on, like a school logo, like where my kids go to school, or something specific to like a sports team or something like that, then you start to identify where you're from. I was out in Boston a couple of years ago, and I know like one of my friends was totally like, make sure everything is scrubbed of, that you're from Wisconsin and from this other stuff, because, we don't want to be identified that we're not local. And also, even I think it was like the locals out here typically don't wear like sneakers or at the time or whatever. So, but yeah, so it was just blending in. It was knowing your location. Bacon wrote, Dolio did a review on that book, Biggest Criticism, No Talk of Bayonets. Yeah. Clay's books, Concrete Jungle, I'd say, is more theoretical. Both books, very good. I wrote a review for Concrete Jungle. So far, Prairie Fire, I think, has a more aggressive tone to it. And there's definitely substantial comparing and contrasting of firearms. So I depending upon how things go, but I mean, I think that's kind of a dicey book for him to have on Amazon right now, just because of topic content, right? Topic content. So I'm going to go through, I found things in there that inform the work that I do, but as I was reading through that, I'm thinking there will be some people who will read this book and already come predisposed with some thoughts and perceive this in a way where they might have some further feedback on what they think, this availability of this book should be. They will get people to pay for it out of their own pockets. People are super easy. Yeah, people are easy to control. People are easy. That's why I said 70% of people, I think, would go with a social credit score. They want to come back to the Taurus. They want to come back to what they think is similarity or normal. And it was after 9/11, right? After 9/11, tell people, hey, listen, you got to take your shoes off at the airport. You can only take, this much of a bottle of shampoo. And people are like, oh, okay. I mean, even that's arbitrary. And the shoe thing, I mean, part of it is just to convey control, and people agree to it. And the more people agree to it, it's just easier to further erode things from them. Again, right now, if you said that, okay, we're going to do this whole social credit score thing, and I mean, you wouldn't exactly, I don't know, call it social credit. I think you'd call it like civic responsibility if it was US. And people be like, yeah, I want to be civically responsible. I mean, for the most part, and you say, if you do this, like, here's some perks you're going to get. And you could throw some things out there, even like a discount, right? Subsidize a discount at certain, McDonald's or, Starbucks or whatever. Who knows what it is, or some tax credit. And people would go for it. Like, they would totally be all over this thing. And they're always going to think, well, it's not going to affect me. I'm not going to be the one. Like, it'll never show up where some tracing is going to show that, imagine this if people start to get into disputes like accusations or divorces or things like this information coming out. I mean, this will be absolutely, absolutely crazy. And what your employers will have access, to this if you're not 1099 employed. But this is, and how much of this is public, right? So would you have the right to know the people around you, what their credit score is? I mean, you could argue that that's discriminatory, but you could also put it out there and say, maybe there are certain things that amplify, gets tinkered with. So not everybody starts at the same level. Some people get points added on because of living in a rougher area, or I don't know. I don't think we're far from it. So let's do the chat. They'll get people to pay for it. Yep. Prairie Fire. Okay. Prairie Fire mentioned bayonets. So yeah, Prairie Fire is this book from Clay. So I will do a review on that one. Hey, we should hang out. So it's our good friend Chad Elkins. Yeah. I was fortunate enough to meet up with Chad and Aaron about a week ago, and we had a terrific time. So I appreciate that very much. And yeah, I'd be interested sometime, Chad, of getting your take on once the new administration solidifies a little bit on what this means for taxes and finances and cryptocurrencies and all of that type of stuff, because I think it's all of that's on the table. Bacon, forgot about the 3-ounce liquid rule. So yeah, I think that was relaxed toward the end. I don't even know if that's in place. We were supposed to go to Orlando and back in March, and I think it was kind of like no longer really enforced. I don't know. I was working with the airport and stuff like that. Hey, Chad, it's my birthday today, by the way. So we say it's my birthday. It really is my birthday for another 21 minutes here. It is my birthday, and it's like 70. It was 72 and sunny in Wisconsin. It's gonna be 72 and sunny tomorrow. I remember birthdays up north. I grew up in northern part of Wisconsin. I remember birthdays. It'd be like a snowstorm, like ice storm. I think it was like 93. The Badgers were playing Ohio State, and I'm watching this like at home, and it was in college. It was further up north. It was just like a complete ice storm, and there was already a foot of snow, and we're just shivering. It was like so cold, and it was just absolutely horrible. So yeah, just absolutely crazy. But Chad, yeah, welcome. Sometime I would love to, if you and Aaron and I could fire up a show and kind of do a recap of what I'm referring to as the shiver on the river when we had our get-together. So yeah, so that's kind of the big things off of my list here. I think we've regressed very quickly to the mean after since March. Up on that diagram, where things were going off. I think now they've come down. I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm saying people have perceived that things have gotten much better. And look at how the media is portraying things to people, right? Suddenly the coronavirus, the numbers are still there. They're still scary, but it's like, oh, there's now a plan in place to deal with this. So people are getting much more positive affirmation through social media. They're feeling that they've regressed back to the mean. And I think you're going to see that then in purchasing. I'm going to track that very closely, but I bet you purchasing changes too. We're going to see massive school funding and just general, I would say a stimulus bill that they're going to push toward a $5 trillion mark, whether it gets there or not. But you're going to see in schools, the argument would be we need to update HVAC systems. We need to update high contact areas, PPE, but then you can tie in all these other things around it. That's going to happen. Check out Mike Glover, right? So Mike Glover on, Chad is right. We need some, or Bacon's right. We need some monetization. We need people to subscribe to this channel. So when I get 1,000, I'm going to make a big sign in the back, a permanent sign. It's going to say, I've got 1,000 subscribers. I've been doing the show like 4 years, and this is the 150th show. And I've had terrific guests on, including Chad Elkins, and still like at 240 subscribers. So I don't know, somebody out there like create, 700 YouTube channels and subscribe on every one of them. But so yeah, Mike Glover, Fieldcraft Survival. Mike was deplatformed in the last day. So survivalist, but also, ex-military. And then, Mike, very transparent. So if Mike goes, who's next to go? So we need to watch this because I think people who are in survival and prepper areas are really going to be scrutinized. And who are the people who are on the outside reporting them, right? Who's saying, this is making me uncomfortable, or I think this is promoting, it could incite violence. But it's going to be, I would say, easier for these platforms, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, to just wipe them off, especially now, between now and January when Biden would be put into office. So I think there's a real threat. For Mike, this is his livelihood. His website was taken down. I would have never expected that. Again, I watch his stuff. I'm a fan of his work. It's very intellectual. It's very thoughtfully put together. Not once did I ever leave one of Mike's videos or posts thinking he was out of bounds or anything where he would not fully promote like the non-aggression principle. I think a lot of what Mike was doing was situational awareness, but also like just fitness, like how to get yourself into shape for, if there's any type of, whether it be a social unrest situation or natural disaster. But the thing is, how many hits can a Mike Glover take before it really impacts your site and your livelihood? And then what if people are starting to think, well, if I buy from Mike or if I sign up for one of his classes, now am I on some kind of AOC Truth and Reconciliation list? Do people know that I took this? Is it a public record? Is my employer going to see this? What does this mean? What does this mean for social credit scores? Like, what the hell? Like, it is just so out there. And it is really weird with AOC. I mean, that there isn't someone that she goes through, right? You think with all of these, like, people in her similar type of position, Congress, or whether it be like a governor or something like that, that they run this by somebody first and they say, what do you think about this? Or can we tune this a little bit before we get it out? And I'm like, when you basically put out a statement of saying, in different words that we want a Truth and Reconciliation Committee, and if you support it, Trump, we will find the artifact of either a payment or we'll find you in an image at a rally or something like that, and that will be out there as a public record for life. Whoa. And then, insinuating that information then will be adverse for you, that this will impact down the road, whether it's a social credit score, whether people can just search this and know that you attended these things. And, of course, it's not supposed to impact employment, but it could patronizing your business, your ability to access resources. I mean, are you going to be the person where, it was that person, they support it? I don't know. I'm blown away that nobody not fact check. Nobody filtered that for her. And two, that the Democratic Party didn't come out and, basically find some way to wordcraft that and say, listen, yeah, that was a really stupid, not a really stupid thing, but we understand, that there's this high level of frustration, but we're working in a partisan, fashion in working across the aisle to move us forward. If Biden would have said that tonight, or Harris, that would have been huge. And then it also kind of lets AOC off the hook without making her necessarily look bad. I think you can say we want to learn how we continue to go down a path without being fully informed. And I mean, there again, like, call me, for Christ's sake. I could put this together. Like, I can spin damn near anything. Call me. I'll do the work for you. But the fact that they didn't do that, and like, again, this won't take much to find this. How much does it take with facial recognition software and other stuff? And people, if they just have time and money, and billionaires giving some cash to this, before it is searchable, before someone does. I mean, how long did it take to find, what was it, Kyle Rittenhouse, the Kenosha, a 17-year-old who killed two in Kenosha and wounded one, that he had attended a Trump rally and they had the image of him in the crowd. I'm saying, these things will be, I'm sure there are people who just attend at these rallies to photograph the crowd and to take records of, to visually scan these crowds, with their cameras and other devices. I mean, obviously you didn't have drones at these things, but it is so yeah, I'm just saying, and I've experienced this personally. I've had, not politics, related, but school safety, related, certainly, heat put on by certain, organizations and things like that you have to navigate. And of course, I mean, you don't want to be badged as the person. I wrote School of Errors. You don't want to be badged as the person who's against school safety, because that's absolutely crazy. That's not what I am. Right. And people that know me, like, no, I'm not against school safety, but they could come out of this and they could say, oh, of course, like you're the guy against, school safety, and, you wrote the book and you're against the standards and, all of this stuff. And it's like, well, once you read the book and know my work, but it's not hard to get discredited, attempt to get discredited by companies, especially when they're selling products, making, huge amounts of money from schools and from states when they sell these things that are complete garbage. But so anyway, so it has been a terrific birthday, actually. The last time we had it this warm, I had in my Chevy Equinox, and that was the first year they came out with those things, 2010. I had it in 2009. I got one of the early models. I had to drive to Fox Lake, Illinois, because they didn't have any black ones in Wisconsin that had a sunroof. So I drove down, and oh my God, like, it was just awesome to get that Equinox in 2010. Like, it was so far advanced versus like any vehicle I had. And it was the first vehicle with a sunroof. Oh man, I just absolutely loved it. Hey, Cameron. All right. Yeah, Bacon, did Glover ever mention the value of bagels? Yeah, Glover's a good guy. I feel really bad for him. And I feel, I mean, not, Mike is able to take care of his own business and things like that. But I feel that the takedown of Mike is setting an example. It's an exemplar for other people, because to me, like, there wasn't a reason to do that to Mike, right? And if Mike is susceptible of this, then other people be like, well, I'm going to be very careful, like, right? Because this happened to Mike. So, but anyway, so I'm down at Fox Lake, and I buy this, and I trade in my Malibu at the time. And I remember driving back, and I had free OnStar. So, and it was a small screen, although, like, it was a really cool vehicle, a nice stereo in it and all. It was just nice. I just really liked it. Brand new, of course. And so I'm using OnStar, and I'm like, I need to find like a place to eat. And they're like, oh, they're really nice to you because you just bought the vehicle. And they're like, "Oh, so how you liking your new?" Yeah, I'm like, "Yeah, it's really cool. Like, it's good. It was nice. It's like a warm night. Sunroof was open, um, and I said, "Yeah, I need like a place to eat." So then they helped me find like a Perkins somewhere, like in northern Illinois, and uh, and I drove home and I brought like a CD, and it was the one that had a thumb drive. Like you could also have songs, but I brought a CD of like it just like oh, it was just great. It was absolutely the greatest thing, and I used navigation to get me home on the Equinox, and it was good. And actually, I sold it to a dad of a guy I worked with, and for a really good price. Like I had quite a few miles on it, but I always took really good care of it. And of course, it's always was in my garage and stuff. But yeah, that was so. Anyway, it was my birthday, and we it was like this, like 72 degrees, and we went out for the day, and I had the sunroof open, and it was awesome. Again, like living in Wisconsin, especially I grew up in northern Wisconsin. This time of year was always cold and snow. Like playing football, end of the season football, you're always playing on a snow covered field where they just like shovel off or they paint over like where the yard lines are. And it just sucked. There was no fun in that at all. I absolutely hated that. Um, and then, of course, you're playing baseball in spring, and there's still snow in the field. I mean, they try to get rid of some of it, but it still snows again. So you're playing baseball like in a snowy outfield, just in general, like it's cold. So, so this is like absolutely. So yeah, Bacon wrote, Doc hates school safety so much he wrote about it. So I'll tell you, well, first of all, School of Airs it's much more than school safety. And I'm debating whether to work with my publisher to do a second edition of this because I had another book worked out. It was Making the Right School Safety Decisions. And I did a presentation, an international presentation on that in February, like it was right before the COVID stuff. During that presentation, I said, like the way things are shaping up with COVID, if I were you, I would start to plan my contingencies if schools were shut down for a while and like, boom, a couple weeks later. So that was a presentation I gave, again, an industry presentation, so I can't release it, although I did show it during my superintendent class that I just got done instructing. But this book, yeah, there's so much in here. You're just, I mean, the foolishness of benchmarking, transitioning into chaos, the Cajun Navy. There's a picture of Doc. Look at this. Oh, picture of Doc right there. There's a gun. I was participating in all of the drills. I mean, it was exercise. It's just crazy stuff, man. But yeah, so it's too bad. It came out in 2019, but right now so much of school is virtual. Book really never addressed that because we didn't have a pandemic. But I have another book I was ready to write called Making the Right School Safety Decisions. And one was like, who's in charge of school safety? Most people think there's some federal law. There isn't any federal law. There's only one state, I think it was Georgia or Kentucky, I have to go back and look, in 2020 that required schools to have locked doors during the school day. That's the only one to this day that does it. And there was a lot of pushback from that. People were testifying before the state legislators of it messes up our airflow. Kindergarten teachers are saying, oh, kids go to the bathroom so much. 4K teachers, that's really disruptive. It's like, no, lock the damn doors during the day. Like lock your classroom doors during the day. Even after Parkland, I went through all the Parkland materials. There's nothing that said teachers had to lock their doors. It was a should. It was a suggestion. And even today, there's nothing saying teachers must lock their doors. So anyway, I was going to put this book together, had it all outlined out. It would be the companion to School of Airs, be the next level. And who's in charge of school safety? Another one had a big section from Drew Bay, right? Our friend Drew Bay. So Drew, drewbay.com, check out. But, Drew's, fitness. So strength and fitness. And, California, for example, last year got rid of a lot of physical education for students and got rid of it because they said, well, their argument for getting rid of it was some students feel uncomfortable, or it's shaming of some students because they're not physically fit, so it's awkward for them to do this. Or students with disabilities, like it's difficult for them to participate. When I'm like, okay, I was a former special ed director for 12 years. I know students with disabilities aren't telling you this. Like, they want to participate in Phi-Ed. So you're creating this false narrative, which you're selling to people. And, the reason to get rid of Phi-Ed is so you can put other things in the Phi-Ed time. So that's why you're trying to get rid of Phi-Ed. But as Drew, pointed out, and I had him on the show, Drew was saying, and I have an entire chapter in this other book, but it doesn't make sense to launch it now, because until we get schools back in session. But Drew is like, if kids need Phi-Ed, right? They need to eat proper foods. They need to be strong. It increases their immune system, right? So they're in school more because they're not getting sick. Spot on, right, Drew? If they're stronger and more fit, they're able to get away from danger and to safety quicker. Absolutely right. Spot on. They can recover from injury faster. So if they're injured in playground sport or during an attack, they have a better chance to recover. Yes. Last one is it's easier for them to participate in rescue. So if they're physically fit and they broke a leg or something, it's easier for people to rescue them versus if they are 100 pounds obese over their target weight. Then, to have people try to rescue them, it's all factual stuff, but it's stuff people don't want to talk about. And how are we not talking about keeping, putting the fitness of kids as a number one priority for school safety? So it was really, and I regret that I missed it in School of Airs, because it would have been perfect. I had a word count I had to work with the publishers, so there were some good things that hit the cutting floor and actually turned them into journal articles. But that's a big part of the next book. But yeah, velocity of information. So I'm progressing on that, and then Doxtradamus. There's Doxtradamus. Oh, kind of like Nostradamus. So I think the person there is like Joe Dolio. Joe's like the magic 8-ball. Joe is just, he's always looking over the horizon. But yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks. So yeah, actually I'm teaching another special education law class in spring. Starts in January. So I will adjust it now for what I believe will be policy changes and things that students will look for with the new administration, and also with the new Secretary of Education. We have some big things also which are going to be coming up. So if you have a student with a disability, they have an IEP, Individualized Education Plan. And those students under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act receive services, IEP services. For example, if they have speech language disabilities, occupational physical therapy in schools. In the last year, with a number of schools being not in person, those haven't all been fulfilled. I know this personally because that's part of my contract work. I work with districts and things like that. And I think there's not only going to be litigation, but I think there's going to be now with the Democratic Secretary of Education move to fund special education at higher levels and higher compensatory services. So, those will be things that I'll need to talk with the students and kind of figure out where they're at, because I think that'll be a highly litigated area, but I also think it's going to be a highly funded area. So it'll be interesting to see kind of the genies out of the bottle too. Like, what do you do for telehealth? What do you do? Like, things were relaxed. Like, you could do telehealth over borders and stuff like that. As someone who holds a Wisconsin license, I had to get licensure in some other states when I was providing some services, and now, like, a lot of that has been kind of released or loosened up. How do you do that? How do you do that? Does it continue? now after a pandemic, because telehealth or do more regulations come into telehealth, more professional development, or like you have to balance it out. You can do like one face-to-face visit for 2 telehealth. What's it going to look like under a Democratic administration? And just some of these other things, I'm just not sure. So, all right, let me just do a quick recap here. So stick with me on that. Biden says school choice will be out the window. Yeah, Sast, you're right with that. And so that right there is a huge, immediate, big difference between the Trump administration, which was campaigning saying school choice and dollars would follow the student, with Biden saying no, school choice will be out the window. So the positioning for districts right now will be to try to maintain what they have. Like if you're a voucher school, if you're a private school that has students because of voucher, it's going to be at a state level to try to maintain what you have, because you're not going to have any support from that from the federal level. Where had Trump won, you would have likely seen an expansion, right? And he could have also taken the Department of Education and linked various funding aspects of that to expansion of charter and vouchers. So that'll be a huge impact out of this election. So Bacon wrote, "Says too many. CNN is celebrating him winning right now." So this is the thing. This is why I think we have regressed to the mean, which I had talked about in the previous podcast. And just let's bring that graphic up real quick here. I've got like 11 books, like I've all outlined, and of course I've just written one. Well, actually I've written a couple other books. It's just anything serious. Okay. So I'm going to bring it up here on the bat screen. No. Bat screen. Yeah, CNN. So one thing I wrote about this in School of Airs. If you look at when CNN started in 1980, I think it was Caspar Weinberger, who was Secretary of State at the time, said, and he was right on, like CNN started to dictate policy for the Pentagon. So you started to see U.S. troops deployed into areas for like food distribution and things like that. Or basically, you wouldn't have done that before. Like it was portraying. You'd have to do, type it in sometime or check out School of Airs, right? But CNN really manipulated public policy. It went against the Weinberger principles of engagement of military force. It started to use the military in a humanitarian way. But the problem with that, of modifying your military to a humanitarian aid, is you start to put your military in a lot of places all over the world, right? Start to expand the use of your military. And it wasn't represented very accurately, right? CNN would show things, but they would show like, here's three blocks of this one area in Africa, and they would portray this as being the entire scenario. But I wrote let me see. I don't know if that made the index. It might have. So one way to tell if you've got a really solid nonfiction book is if it has an index. Mine does, and it takes time, and you have to pay for an index. The publisher pays. Do I have CNN, LMN? No. Huh. Well, that's weird. Okay. Well, I know it's in here. I didn't know that it did not make the cable news TV. What the hell? Let's take a look here. It's in the book. This is in the Science TV. Titanic made the book. 10th Amendment made the book. Well, what in the hell? What 3 words? Well, this is really weird. Shit. Weinberger. It was Weinberger principle. It should have been. Huh. Well, all right. That one's on me, I guess. So anyway, there's somebody who professionally does this once you're done, and then God, I can't even find where the hell I've cited it. It's in here. Shit. This is, damn it. That's disappointing. Damn it. Anyway, so yeah. So we went over here. I've talked about this since March, and this is the philosophy of information. It's the title of my book, but this is the concept of it. So using March as an example, things get real wonky. People get out of their ordinary routines. All this new vocabulary gets in here that you have to figure out what is social distance, and it starts to become part of your lexicon, or words you use every day. We cross the streams, right? Once we get into 90 days, people really start to lose it, especially if there's no, like, it's going to end. When I interviewed Rob Travis, the crab boater, the thing there is, like, the dude knew that he'd be off the crab boat after 122 days. Like, the season ended, so he knew he'd be done. And that was really awesome for him. Hey, go smash the thumbs up, and if you haven't already, for the show, I appreciate it. So he could live through that chaos, right? But anyway, like, nobody knew what was going on. So people really get primed, this failure to regress. I talked about that. Once we got into August, people are like, oh, I just want to get back to normal. What they think of normal is a similarity. We saw this crowd in behavior. That's a sign of people just expecting things to go bad for a long time. They're buying puzzles, they're buying paint, things that make them feel good, interior paint. So anyway, this present day, this now, I'll have to amend this because the election now has brought a lot of people back down closer to the mean, or what they think is normal. Not that it actually probably has changed. Some of it has changed, but look what the media is doing. As Bacon said, CNN is portraying a very strong bias, pro-Democrat, pro Biden. All of the media really is. I mean, even, in Fox has gone largely kind of quiet, or kind of middle of the road now. But yeah, so your media, what you're getting in your newspaper, what you're getting in your radio, all of that has substantially turned toward a positive tone, or an optimistic tone, even like coronavirus, like a more optimistic tone with the new Democratic presidency and cabinet and whatever it would be. So this whole thing is, people perceive that things have gotten, that they've gotten better, and very quickly. And as long as they perceive it, it's, for most people, it's a reality. Like 70% right across the board is just selling. It's just selling it. I can't say enough you can get this book on YouTube. You can download this for free. Thinking Fast and Slow. Daniel Kahneman was a Nobel Prize winner. This is an excellent book. Maybe about 10 years old. Excellent. Just go to YouTube. You can find, won't cost you anything. It's intentional. I'm not trying to give something that's hacked out there. But yeah, I mean, it's just right. The whole marketing aspect, the more you say things, the more you frame things, media can make anything seem horrible or perfect. And that's what they're doing. And people, that spring was so coiled. People so wanted a reason to come back to normal. Everything was, they were past finite voltage. They were crowd in. They've been, since March. I went back to normal. The media is like, okay, here's your back to normal. And most of them are jumping right on it. They're not thinking any deeper than that. And they'll kind of just manifest it that way, right? It is absolutely wild how fast we have regressed to a norm for people, how people are perceiving things. And if they've gone out, right, they're not seeing more stuff on their store shelves than what they saw a week ago. As Bacon said, he's still seeing, what riots and civil unrest up in Seattle and stuff like this. But, is it being portrayed, centered on TV now? And so, yeah, and it was over portrayed right? It was, a lot of the stuff was over portrayed, but the steam is out of this. The spring isn't coiled, anymore. The energy isn't in the spring. And Scott Adams, it was spot on with this, because he said the day after, the election, November 4th, he said when the rioters got up that morning, they didn't know what to do. I mean, because do we go out full tilt riot or do we not riot? I mean, it was one of those things that was really odd, because I think deep down, a lot of people did feel that was going to, again, be a Trump win. And when it wasn't, it was like, how do we handle this? And then when it got, well, we're not going to call it for a few days, then it's, the things just lose momentum. Like, they just lose momentum. So, and the media started to work. They already had the positive narratives going. So, but yeah, I guess, I mean, overall for people, it's going to help. It's going to restore a lot of people to a better state of mind. It's not going to be more honest for anybody. And anybody over here in the chat, you've got, what's going on. I mean, you're watching, going to go live on YouTube tonight. I guess talk about the election. The format's wide open. Hey, Bacon, good Bacon. What's your channel name at Bacon? Yeah, Bacon. And Bacon does, and I just want to give a little plug too. Like, Bacon has highly intellectual blog posts. His shows also, but I think it's different. I mean, a show has to be like a real time, right? But when he does his blog post, he really frames, he takes so many perspectives. So he kind of spins you around the panoply, right? And when you're done reading one of his posts, he does this really well, like far better than I do. Like, I'm good at certain things. I can't do the way that he writes. I don't have that skill. So it's really cool to read Bacon's work. What is it? The goddamn bacon.com, right? Bacon.com. Because he has that ability to not just give you this first person, highly intellectual, unpacked perspective and relate it out. He can move you around, and I think it's really a cool skill that he has, that he's able to do. So I enjoy his work. So I'm ready to pass up. Me too. So it's no longer my birthday. Thank you, everybody. Subscribe to the Safety Doc channel. Tell your friends. Subscribe from all of your channels. Go in, write a review here for this book. This book needs more 5-star reviews. School of Errors, Rethinking School Safety in America. It is your good friend, the Safety Doc. Da 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 da. They say it's my birthday. Da 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 da. It sure is my birthday. Thank you very much, Sast, Bacon, Chad, everybody, Drew, everybody, Joe. Take care, everybody. This is Safety Doc out. Dun, dun.